Everybody ready? There we go. Well, good evening, everyone. And as Director Benarott said, welcome to the first meeting of the Edina City Council. It is January 2nd, 2024. And before we get the meeting called to order, just a reminder and as a follow-up on what Director Benarott had to say with regard to communications this evening. We're doing these meetings and continuing to do them all during COVID and post-COVID in a hybrid sort of fashion, so folks can call in and express their opinions, whether it's a public hearing or a community comment. Tonight we only have community comment. It's that first meeting of the year where we do a lot of things that kind of set the stage for things that we need to be doing the rest of the year in terms of designating the newspaper for the city and authorizing signatories for bank accounts and things of that nature. And just to make sure we do everything right, the sheriff is coming in tonight to talk to us and oversee what we've got going on here. And I see her coming in the back door or the front door. And tonight there is no public hearing matter that you can testify at, but there is community comment. So just a reminder, if it's on the agenda this evening or scheduled for a future public hearing, you will not be able to comment on those particular two categories of matters this evening in community comment. So community comment is the only time during the meeting that you'll be able to comment on things that are of concern to you that you wish to address with the council. People may be watching on cable TV or at edinamn.gov live meetings or at facebook.com, and we welcome their participation. As Director Benarott said, we'll have people in the audience speak first, and then we'll go to our viewing audience to see if there's anyone that wishes to testify remotely with respect or provide comment or testimony with regard to the community comment portion of the agenda. So having provided that information, I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask our clerk, Sharon Allison, to call the roll.
Councilmember Agnew.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson.
Here.
Councilmember Pierce is absent. Councilmember Risser.
Here.
Mayor Hovland.
Here. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a form of meeting agenda that's been published to the residents in our community and for us as well. Is there anyone that wishes to modify the meeting agenda in any form or fashion that's on the council or staff member? Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda as published?
So moved.
Member Jackson moves. Member Agnew seconds the adoption of the meeting agenda as published. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the meeting agenda as published, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And now community comment. We have come up to community comment portion of the agenda. I'm going to have the staff put that phone number up on the screen so folks that are at home can see that number. And remember, press *3, not *1, to indicate an interest in speaking. We're using a little different methodology tonight. You can see you've got an access code. So you've got three things to do there that have a numeric reference. So you've got a call-in number, an access code, and a password. All things that you need to punch in order to speak, and then press *3 to indicate an interest in speaking, and Director Benarott will bring you into the council. But first, let's go to any residents in our community that wish to address the council on a matter of concern to them that's not on the agenda or scheduled for a future public hearing. Yes. Good evening. Happy New Year.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Ralph Zickert. I live at 4311 Cornelia Circle. I'm here once again to talk about water rates. First, to answer Councilmember Jackson's question. Second, to correct a falsehood. And third, to address the ongoing pattern of replies that are not answers. First, the question. During a work session, Member Jackson asked a very simple question. How much more or less does it cost a commercial business to flush a toilet versus a resident? Though easily calculated, no reply was offered. So, Member Jackson, the answer is a commercial business pays 38% less. Yes, the commercial business pays 38% less to flush their toilet. Now, to be fair, that difference equates to less than half a penny per flush. Second, the falsehood. In that same work session, city staff stated that commercial accounts used less water than commercial metered irrigation accounts. That statement was false by a wide margin. And it was made in an attempt to gloss over the belated acknowledgement during that work session that yes, 2023 commercial water rates had in fact decreased, a point that Mr. Neal has repeatedly said his team has been unable to understand. Which brings me to my final point. The ongoing series of non-replies or replies that are not answers to clear and specific questions posed during public comment. In this case, water rates. Instead, Mr. Neal has chosen to slight the analysis supporting those comments or to not reply at all. What's particularly hard to understand is that Mr. Neal's disparaging remarks continued after his own staff acknowledged that commercial water rates had in fact declined. Had Mr. Neal's team at any point reached out in the prior 9 months to understand or to educate, many hours on both our parts could have been avoided. So yes, Mr. Neal, commercial water rates did decline, and they declined so much so that even after the recent 5% increase, some 90% of all commercial accounts will still pay less for water in 2024 than they did in 2022. I, for one, do not need a whole year's worth of data to realize that reducing the price of a product will not lead to the conservation of that product. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zickert. Did you submit your written comments to the clerk? Oh, you have them. Okay, Director Benner has them. Good. I think we'll all want to take a look at them after the fact. Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, David Frankel, 4510 Lakeview Drive, Edina. As you may have seen, I sent an email out last night regarding the state auditor's report on municipal profits of municipal liquor stores in Minnesota, including Edina. And it's a little disturbing to see the slide over the last 5 years of the Edina municipal liquor stores. They're sliding towards insolvency. In 2018, these are all numbers you can get from the state auditor. They're on their website. 2018 net profit, $1.4 million. Profit margin was 10.7%. State auditor just released these numbers last week. For 2022, those numbers are down to $624,000 with a net margin of 4.3%. It's been cut in half in 5 years. This is real data. We send a lot of people to the National League of Cities to use data as a way to make decision making. I haven't seen anything on any city document that talks about the decrease. This has been a gentle slide. This doesn't happen overnight. And all I see out of city publications is all the money that the municipal liquor stores make for the city of Edina. No mention that these profits are sliding, and there's an issue here. A couple of years ago, an Edina City Council member said she had a secret plan to fight off one of the biggest problems, which is called Total Wine. Well, Total Wine last year opened another store in St. Louis Park, and there's no way to fight those guys. The largest liquor retailer in the United States. I don't know if Edina has a plan, because if the liquor stores do slide into insolvency, if they don't make money for 2 or 3 years, there has to be a public hearing to decide what to do with these liquor stores. Are we going to wait till there's an insolvency issue before we have a public hearing to discuss with the community what we should do long-term with these liquor stores? Because the profits are not going up, they're going down. We went through a high point with the pandemic. Hopefully that pandemic's not coming back. But we have to do something. And I haven't heard or seen anything. All I hear are rosy articles about the liquor store. Something has to be done. There has to be a plan. And I'm sure most of you have worked in the private sector in corporate America. When profits and profit margins go down, there's an impact. And what's that impact going to be? Are we going to close the store? Are we going to look to selling it off to a private entity to run the liquor stores? Something has to be talked about. I'm not saying anything has to be done. Have to start talking, and I haven't seen that anywhere. And this has been going on for years, quietly behind the scenes. These margins have been going down. The residents really have to keep track of what goes on at City Hall and raise these issues like I'm doing. Why didn't the city manager bring this up? Why isn't there a plan? This didn't happen yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frankel. Good evening.
Good evening.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
My name is Jimmy Coppins. I live at 6221 Belmore Lane. I want to first off start off by saying, like, hello, thank you for everything you do. I know that this is a difficult job, well, somewhat difficult, dealing with the public and answering these questions and going through all this stuff. I just want to give like a little bit of gratitude to everybody here, police officers, the sheriff, and all these nice people here that are involved in this whole process. You know, what a great city we live in. I'm here to talk about, I received a notification about my tax increase. And it's pretty big. My tax increase is pretty big. I would have to say that my property definitely did not appreciate value by 18.8%. And I've actually been going to a lot of these meetings that are on this form here to personally and directly object to everyone here the increase in taxes and the amount of taxes that citizens of this great state of Minnesota have to pay. It's egregious. And I don't want to throw around words like corruption or fraud, but I do want to throw around the word that is inappropriate use of funds, inappropriate spending, inappropriate taxation of citizens. And I don't think anyone here really understands that there's someone on the other side of that that has to pay for it. And that someone's me. And I do agree that, you know, citizens have to pay taxes, but we are not the biggest state in the United States, but we have the 7th highest taxes out of the entire United States, which when you look around, we do have great services, but where's that money going? Really, where is it going? It's a lot of money. Particularly, I live close to Blake Road, and my Blake Road has been rebuilt 3 straight years, torn up, redone, torn up, redone, torn up, redone, and I saw today that there is something on the agenda that has to do with additional funds going to a Blake Road rebuild, or what have you. I don't really know, but I can tell you that there's a lot of things that are being misused. There's a lot of funds that are being misused, and I want everyone here to look at my face and see me. I'm a citizen here, and I'm going to do something about it. I'm not going to do something inappropriate, but I'm going to be involved in this because I think that something's going on. And I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for what you do. And I hope I see everyone again in like a more professional fashion. And I want to thank you. I do have to say, though, that I'm probably going to really object to this increase in taxes in any way that I can. I don't want to throw around like any legal. I don't want to get any lawyers involved or anything like that. But I really don't think that my property has increased in value by 18.8%. Thank you.
So that's why you're here. Why don't we? Sometimes we wait until the following. But we'll just have a little conversation here. And we got Mr. Urim here with us this evening. Our city manager happens to be ill tonight, so we've got an interim
Am I
administrator
allowed
here.
to talk, or is it?
It's okay.
Right, do I
It
sit
doesn't
down,
mean
or-
that. Pardon me?
Do I just sit down? Or
No,
do
I think you stay there because I wanted to just help you out a little bit
right.
in terms of process and what you can do next with this respect to this. This is a proposed potential tax increase, but it's not your actual tax increase. It's just giving you a notification in advance of
If
what
I
it
didn't
might
show up,
be.
I think it would probably be a real increase. So.
But it's significant. I'm not trying to diminish the 18.3% or whatever it was you said it was. But if you think your property isn't worth what the assessor thinks it's worth, there's a method for that.
Yeah, I understand that, and it is a convoluted and complicated process that requires a lot of documentation, right? So basically, again...
Actually, no. I mean, I hate to cut you off, but I want to tell you, no, all you need to do is come in and talk to our assessing department.
Okay, that's not what I heard from
And
someone
then
else.
they'll come out and look at your house, and that's step one, and they'll come out and see if the estimated market value matches up with what the county said on the estimated tax market value increase that you got.
I've heard something different, but I will follow up on that.
And then secondly, you can come here when we run this Board of Appeal and Equalization process in the early spring. So keep alert for that, and then
Okay.
you'll be talking to people like us who live in the town with you, who are also getting tax increases, but they serve on this Board of Appeal and Equalization, and they'll hear your case. And it doesn't have to be a sophisticated case. You don't have to hire an appraiser or a real estate agent to do that. You can come in and explain to them why you don't think this is an appropriate level of tax increase based on the market value of your home. And I think those are a couple of things you can do right off the bat. And then you can also go to the county when they get to their process, which is after our process. So
Okay.
I don't know, Don, if is that roughly accurate in terms of process?
Mayor, that's correct.
Okay.
All right.
So,
Should have written all that down. I'll have to look at the video and get back to you.
yeah, so I think the first thing to do, this you won't have to write down, just come into City Hall and ask to see the assessors,
The assessors.
or make an appointment with the person at the front desk to see an assessor, and then tell them you want to have them come out and look at your house.
Okay.
Because
All right.
mistakes get made, so.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great news. Thank you. Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay.
All right. All right.
Okay.
So-
Thanks for coming in. Anyone else in the audience wish to address the council on a matter of concern to them? Okay. On the liquor store issue, I think,
Check online? Do you want to check online?
I was just going to address it.
I do not have any callers to test out my budget system over here.
Yeah, I was going to
So
switch
we'll
there
try
in a
it again
minute.
next time.
I saw you doing other things, and I thought there probably wasn't anybody on the line, but nonetheless, on the liquor store issue, I think they're convening another task force. I don't know if you have any information on that. We had a citizen task force that worked on this back in 2016, 2017, when Total Wine first came in, as Mr. Frankel said, down on the Edina Bloomington border, and our sales dropped way down. Our net revenue dropped down, and we had some citizens that were in the liquor business help us kind of reset everything, and then we were quite successful for a while. And I think there's, at least I heard talk of a task force being formed again because of the diminishing revenue. I don't know if you know anything about that or not.
Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm not aware of another task force being formed.
Okay.
I will, just a couple of comments about the liquor operation, though. The liquor operations, Josh Furbush, the manager, the finance department, the city manager's office, we spend a great deal of time looking at the profitability and various metrics that were described tonight. And it is a concern for us, and we are working towards really understanding the challenge with the state auditor's report. And unfortunately, every liquor store reports a little bit differently on the revenues and expenditures. So we have expenditures that are placed on our enterprise funds as well as the liquor operation that some of the other communities don't have. So we're looking at trying to equalize across the board the stores that are mentioned. And that process has been ongoing, and it continues. So expect to see something from that.
Well, I think if we have a different computational method than the state auditor, then people in our town ought to know about it. What are our numbers, and what's the basis for those numbers? Because that's an important thing for all of us to know about. All right. So anybody else come online, Jennifer? Okay. I think Mr. Zickert's comments, we're going to have to take those in writing and take a look at them and see, what your thoughts are on those computational figures that he had.
Yeah, we'll follow up and do the calculations and
Okay.
present a response.
Yeah, and I think that he raised several times now this concern that commercial users are getting a break over residential users on the rate, and so I think that's what we want to drill down on. And if there's a reason for it, a plausible reason for it, then we need to know what that is. So,
Yep.
Okay. All right. I think that concludes that part of it. Did you have anything that you were going to report on behalf of Manager Neal from the last meeting?
Mayor, members of the council, I do not.
Okay. I think he had some comments that he needed to respond to, some concerns, but we'll hold those until the next meeting on the, what is that, on the 16th, I think. All right. All right, let's move on in the agenda then to the consent agenda, and Member Risser has asked me to remove items, was it 6R and S, Ralph Sally, 6R and S from the consent agenda. Are there any other council members that wish to remove any other items from the consent agenda? All right. With the exception of items 6R and S, is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda in a single motion?
So move. I second.
All right, Member Jackson moves, Member Agnew seconds the motion to adopt the items on the consent agenda with the exception of items 6R and S, which we will take up momentarily. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right, now let's go to both of the items that Member Risser asked to be removed, dealt with change orders on the what we call the Grandview pedestrian bridge. And Director Milner is here this evening, I think, to help give us some insight into what those cost changes were all about. But Member Risser, I'll turn to you first, and you may have some specific questions that you want to ask in conjunction with either one of those items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we did receive a lot of information about the additional costs. However, this did not come our way until a resident emailed all of us and noted that the request for purchase change order really was inadequate, and they are inadequate. When we look at those requests for purchase change orders, they have very little information about why additional costs have been generated. And I think let's make 2024 a year of transparency. We need, when we get these purchase request changes, we need to know why. Okay, and that form needs to be filled out in a much more meticulous kind of way. So that was my first concern. But in terms of both of these expenditures, this is for the Grandview pedestrian bridge, and looking at both of those forms, it was very clear that the scope of this project is simply to get access from the upper deck of our municipal parking ramp and make it possible to move across the railroad tracks and get to Arcadia Avenue. It is a very myopic kind of project in that the only way you can get to the upper deck and access the bridge if you are somebody who is differently abled and you are in a wheelchair is to go and drive up onto that upper deck. If you don't own a van, if you're somebody who's using a wheelchair, you're taking the bus. If you're somebody living nearby and you just want to roll over, you're out of luck. You can't get to it. And so, you know, when we talk about this is part of a TIF project, or TIF finance project. It's supposed to be something that benefits the area, and it really, I think the motivation was the proposed development of the old Public Works site. And so for me personally, I was not here in 2021 when the bids went out. I went back, I looked at the bid documentation, and again, it was that very myopic kind of project. And this is not the first time where we've had a project that has not met basic ADA requirements. And I understand that we will be pursuing a possible solution to that and talking about it with our capital improvement project in 2024, but that's not good enough. And it really, this is a project that keeps me up at night. I worry about somebody on a bike going across that bridge, getting into the parking ramp and not having an exit available to them. So for me, that's not okay. When we built the Pamela Park Rec Center, we didn't put in the button that opens the door so people could get in if they were in a wheelchair. And so what I want to figure out is how do we stop creating situations that are ADA non-compliant? And do we need to bake into our RFPs specific language that says this must be ADA compliant. I know that would be exceptional, that, we should be able to trust that federal requirements are met, but this is something that has happened, and it happened when the Pamela Park building was made. It happened in 2021 when we started discussing this. And so I have really a lot of reservations about supporting both of these requests. So I don't know if Director Milner wants to respond to any of that, but I wanted to make it very clear what my concerns are.
Thank you. Well, I think you could probably respond, Director Milner, to, I see two issues there. One is, and I think we've talked about this before, the challenges around ADA that you had with respect to this pedestrian bridge, but it doesn't necessarily, as I recall, mean that it's not ADA compliant. And number two was more specificity around the cost overruns,
Yep.
which isn't here.
Yep.
I mean, that's a fair point.
Yes.
There's no specificity around what's the reason for that change order number two, $269,500 basically.
Yep, I'll do better on providing more of those details with future ones. To your first question, I recall the HRA reviewed lots of concepts for this bridge idea. And at the time we talked about the parking ramp, it was a 1980s constructed parking ramp. We knew it wasn't ADA compliant, or portions of it wasn't. And that was always going to be a future phase. How do we make that better in the future? So everything that was constructed, the sidewalk from Arcadia, we added access from the road on Arcadia too, so there's ped ramps added. The sidewalk is ADA compliant, the bridge, and the connection up to the parking ramp. But the top level of the parking ramp has a slope that's greater than what's recommended by ADA rules. The entrance into the ramp is also steeper than what's recommended. And that was always a discussion with the HRA at the time about a future project to look at that parking ramp, or extend a trail facility to the north towards the intersection of Interlochen and Vernon Avenue towards the liquor store, to get people to be able to access that way, to access those stores in that direction. So there's a couple other phases that were discussed, and we'll look at that with that future CIP that Member Risser mentioned for next year.
All right, and then with respect to the other one, there was two items here, R and S, both change orders, and both had that more general sort of description of what you were requesting for in terms of paying for cost overruns.
Correct, yeah.
Could you
both.
describe generally what these are for?
Yep,
These payments are for? That would be helpful.
Yeah, and then you'll have this on your HRA, the next HRA meeting coming up in January, so I'll add those details to the HRA, because the HRA approved these contracts too. But the changes we saw were bad soils, so we had to make some changes to the fill. We had to add helical anchors. We had to do a concrete grade beam to support the retaining wall over a utility. We had to move gate valves. The decorative lighting and the panels and that stuff, that was a change, because when we got the original contract, we didn't have that engagement piece done with the residents yet. So once we learned what the artist was going to do from panels, we wanted to make sure we weren't hiding those behind steel trusses of the bridge. There was some work with the private utility and a few of those other items like that. So the one change order is with Pember, who did the work. The work is completed. A majority of the work is completed. Fencing and railings are left.
So they've done the work and they haven't been paid?
They've been paid and it's been done.
Okay.
This is just to tidy up the contract. This is real typical during construction with stuff built in the 50s and 60s. We find stuff and we can't come to council every day to ask for a change order. So we make those reasonable considerations during construction. And then many of those bad soils needed structural engineering to review to make sure the stuff is safe and it'll last a long time. So that's where the second change order is with that engineering firm to do those calculations and make sure it's still safe from a public standpoint. So we would request you.
That's the Kimley Horn portion of it?
Yep, so we'd request the council approve those tonight, and then they'll be on your agenda at the next HRA meeting, and I'll provide more of those details that I provided in that email to you yesterday.
All right. So the consequences of not approving this are what?
The auditors would see contracts that don't match. So this is to tidy up the contracts for when the auditors come from a financial standpoint.
Okay. Other questions, Member Risser?
No, that's it.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you to move these matters, but does somebody want to move R and S so we can have a further discussion, or at least an opportunity for further discussion?
So moved. A second.
We got a motion and a second to adopt the request for, or approve the request for purchase for change order number 2 for the Grandview pedestrian bridge and change order number 1 for the Grandview pedestrian bridge. for engineering services. These are items 6R and S. Is there further discussion? Yes, Member Agnew, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that I do agree with Member Risser on the clarity and transparency in these change orders. And it's, I've seen this in the past, and I think especially when we have projects that started before my term or are spanning a long period of time, it's helpful to have that context and provide more of that information within the memo in itself. And then especially within the forms specific to community impact and environmental impact, I would like to see those specific to the change order and not specific to the project as a whole, because I think that again, just provides more clarity. But overall, I support this. This is a change order. I feel like at this point, the work has been done, the work has been paid for, so this feels like a technicality, but I just think some slight iterations we can make on adding transparency. So thank you.
Thanks, Member Agnew. Member Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Milner, did I understand you correctly that our next HRA meeting, we're going to talk about the next phase of making this more ADA compliant, or are we just going to talk about the specific change orders?
Just the change orders, because whenever we have this, recall this was tax increment financed funded projects, so we take those both to the City Council and the HRA. So you'll see these same items on the consent agenda. I'll provide more details in that case and be there for another discussion. But we are not talking about future phases. That'd be part of our capital improvement plan in 2024. So typically we start to draft projects by June, and then the council sees those rough ideas in the summertime, and then you'll consider approval of those in the fall, and then for sure approving that capital plan by the end of next year.
Okay, so I'll put a request in that I'd like to have a detailed discussion about what the next stages of this are at some point in time in that process, because rather than having it all together with everything, I'd like to know that we've got a plan moving forward to make this more ADA compliant.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
The other thing I think would be helpful, this is a good idea that Member Jackson has, is to see diagrams of what you're describing to us verbally, so that we can understand what the problems are with trying to get ADA compliance out of a
Yes.
structure that was built before things were required to be ADA compliant, and trying to marry them up.
Yep, we can do that. We'll
So
provide some
I think if you
graphics.
do that and then create some kind of a legend for us so we can understand what the challenges are, both what you had up to this point and what you're going to have going forward, I think that'd be a good thing for us to know and understand.
Yep, we can do that as much as possible.
Okay. All right. We've got a motion and a second on 6R and S, approving those requests for purchase. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of adopting items 6R and S and approving those requests for purchase on those change orders, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Carried. Those items are approved. I had a quick question, though, on the, I don't know who's, on this labor agreement. I forgot to pull that one. That's T. We haven't done any negotiating with the labor union, the new labor union contract folks that are dealing with or representing the electricians yet. This is just an approval of their labor agreement. Is that right?
I can speak to that, Mayor. The electricians are in my group. So this is the contract with the
What's
electrical
the
union.
International Brotherhood of
Yep.
Electrical Workers?
Yep, this is a 2-year approved, voted on, approved contract with the union.
All right.
And we
I
would
see
suggest
all the
leaving it on there and
I
approving it.
see all the text in here, but maybe I missed it. I didn't see the, anything relative to pay. You know, if it was an increase over what they had before they were unionized.
Yeah, usually HR works with those details on what they provide in the different unions. I don't know what they typically provide in
Okay.
your packets for union contracts. So I think it's
All right.
typical what they've provided you with the other unions in the city.
This agreement dealt more with the fact that the electricians that work at the city wanted to become part of a union.
There was multiple.
And we entered into a contract or a labor agreement with the union that's going to represent them.
Our electricians were in the 49ers, the Public Works Union, which didn't provide the training necessary
Okay.
for our electricians in HVAC, and the pay wasn't where the typical electrical union was, and they had to plow snow. So those are three things they've been having discussions with since I got here and since took over their working group, and those are the three things that they negotiated and worked through with this new contract in the electrical union.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the City Council. So this really is a new bargaining unit with, what do we have, 4 members?
Yep, correct.
So it's a really small bargaining unit. And you had asked about the pay. The pay is included in Appendix A1, which is,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I read the whole body of it and missed that. Okay. All right, I got you. That's helpful. But I was still wondering whether this represented, 3%. There's an increase over, in 2024, they're getting a 3% increase over 2023. Okay, good. Good to know. Thanks.
yeah, and Mayor,
for
those
that.
increases are consistent with all the other city employees.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now let's move on here. Thanks for that discussion on the new contract, the new labor agreement with the electrical workers. I'm going to turn now to our chief, who we have a special guest this evening. We should feel good. You're starting out the new year right in Edina. How about that? It's just unbelievable. It just we feel so good about that. So, Chief, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, Chief Milburn with the Police Department. We got here tonight because one of our council members had asked a number of weeks ago about what are we doing with the fentanyl crisis. Councilmember Jackson, I think that came from you. And so as we were talking about that, we've also had many discussions about regional crime in the metro area. We certainly have been touched by that here in Edina. So we thought this would be a good opportunity to ask Sheriff Witt to come in and just speak to a number of those issues that she's handling in her leadership capacity at the county level. Sheriff Witt, as you will hear, is very passionate about the fentanyl crisis. The Sheriff's Office is doing a lot of work and a lot of preparation for what we're up against because it is a crisis and we are dealing with some really serious issues. So she's going to explain and talk in some detail about that. I will share with you that we have a very good relationship with the Sheriff's Office. And that has been true for about 30 years that I've been in this business and still continues on to this day as I have worked in the city of Edina. So Sheriff Witt was gracious in accepting our invite to come out and speak with all of you here tonight. And so I'll turn over to Sheriff Witt, and when she's done and concludes, I'll stand for any questions as she will as well. So thank you, and appreciate you coming tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Sheriff, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. I want to thank Mayor Hovland, Chief Milburn, and the members of the City Council for inviting me here today. I have a few slides today that will help guide this presentation, and I'm going to point out one of my weaknesses is staying on point sometimes, but I'll get to that point. First, I want to quickly let you know who I am. I think it's really important to know who our leaders are so that it gives you a better understanding of the lenses that I use when going to make so many decisions involving so many people in our communities. Then I will go into the challenges facing law enforcement and how we are strategically approaching them in order to provide public safety to our residents, our business owners, and our visitors. Public safety is a top priority. It is an issue that affects every other issue. Public safety and public health go hand in hand, so as we're talking a lot about even mental health right now, that absolutely falls under the public safety realm. Excuse me. And when talking about policing, it's not just about enforcing the law. It's leading with humanity while we prevent, intervene, and enforce acts that cause harm in our communities. Excuse me. That didn't happen until I got here. Sorry. But before I get into all of the details, I will briefly tell you a little bit about myself. I was raised in South Minneapolis. I'm a graduate from South High School. Sorry, I did play a lot of basketball, and if my memory serves me correct, I think we beat Edina. But before entering law enforcement, I worked in the nonprofit. I worked with an agency that did dual-purpose services, as my original degree is in chemical dependency and family therapy. So I specifically worked with families with open child protection cases and facing chemical health challenges. I didn't see myself in law enforcement. until I took a tour of the Hennepin County Jail. The female detention who gave that tour talked to me about how they needed more women, and specifically people of color, in this field. Without much thought, I applied. Simply put, I always tried to work jobs where I found purpose, and that's about having that heart of service. And now, I spent over 23 years in law enforcement because of that tour. One of the things I want to stress about that tour is that is a part of proactive policing. That was not recruitment. It was showing people what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and those are some of the mechanisms that still work today. So I started off as a detention deputy in the Hennepin County Jail in 2000 and went on to Dakota County as a licensed peace officer in the year 2004. The best part of my entire career was being a school resource officer. Spending 16 years at Dakota County, 6 of those years I chose to be a school resource officer in what we call Setting Forward schools, which means every kid there has some kind of mental health or behavioral challenges. I knew the importance of school resource officers and how the program was so valuable in building those positive relationships with kids and students, the teachers, and our communities. Again, just doing something that brought purpose was always important to me. So, during my time there, I just always did what I thought was right, always tried to help. I was never one to try to climb the ladder, shall we say. And woohoo, I got promoted to the rank of sergeant by doing what's right, by taking care of the community, and being there for the communities that I took an oath to serve and protect. I was also the first woman in that agency to ever reach the rank of captain by using those same morals every day in the work that I did. In 2019, I returned to the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office in the appointed position of major. And as a major, I oversaw the jail and detention services, which is the largest bureau at the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. In 2022, I was elected as the 29th sheriff of Hennepin County. And tomorrow will mark my official 1-year anniversary as a sheriff for Hennepin County. So about the sheriff's office. We currently have approximately 815 employees. That includes our civilian, sworn, part-time staff. And like many agencies, we have staffing shortages. Right now, we are short about 65 licensed deputies. That's about 20% of our authorized strength. And short 26 detention deputies, which is 12% of our authorized strength. We are aggressively recruiting, and we have recently sworn in large classes of both detention and licensed staff. We have also lateraled in 13 experienced detectives who are all starting at the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office this month. This is great because it's going to help with a lot of the investigations and the work that we do on our task forces, which is really crucial right now. As of the last year, we now have 5 bureaus. Hennepin County traditionally has 4, but we did add a 5th one. We have our Investigative Bureau, Administrative Bureau, Court Services and Detention Bureau, Public Safety Services, and Community Relations, which is the newest bureau. When we go and talk about the challenges facing law enforcement, first off, let's talk about the depleted pipeline. I'm also an adjunct professor at Inver Hills Community College, and I could tell you that I've seen my classes go from double digits down to single digits, less than 10. We're seeing a little bit of an increase there, and as I talk to my peers at other colleges, we're seeing a bit of an increase, but we are nowhere where we used to be. So, those conversations and talking about how do we recruit new people to this field is we're getting very creative. Let's just put it that way. Then we got to talk about the retention side of things. We're losing a lot of staff to agencies outside of the Hennepin County area. And there's many reasons for that. Well, I wouldn't say many, there's a couple, but they're very serious issues as to why we are losing staff. One will be paid, 2 is just some of the politics that we have going on in Hennepin County. But here goes the deal. We know that Hennepin County is a great county. We know that Edina has a great city. We know that Edina has a great chief. You owe me for that, Chief. No. We know that we have the tools that could continue to attract people, but it is going to be working harder with less services to get there, and we cannot give up hope. The other thing we got to talk about is the lack of trust that goes on between community and policing. You know, something I find myself saying to people is, let's talk about transparency, because some of the lack of trust has to do with the lack of transparency. As I tell people all the time, there's nothing that we do that you can't find on Google. So sometimes we got to fill in the blanks for people to help with that. You know, I don't go into this thinking that we can change all minds, but we can't give up hope and say, well, we're just not going to try it all. Then we talk about the increase in frequency and severity of crime since COVID and George Floyd. Violence and crime reinforce themselves. When you combine an increase in the need for law enforcement with a decrease of licensed peace officers, the problem gets worse quickly. That's the trend we have been seeing nationwide for the past several years. That's the trend we've been seeing in Minnesota. That is the trend that we've been seeing in Hennepin County. We are no different. Then we talk about the lack of consequences and accountability. People need to know that there are consequences for their actions, and we must send the right message to our communities. There's this notion out there that you can't be compassionate and empathetic while doing this job. Well, I'm here to tell you that's absolutely not the truth. You can be compassionate, you can be empathetic while holding people accountable. It's guided by leading with humanity. It's simple. And then there's the criminal justice system as a system at whole. If we fail in any part of this system, enforcing the law, investigating crime, prosecuting crimes, and rehabilitating our incarcerated population, our communities suffer. All of these components are a necessity in order for us to have an operational system. So with these challenges in mind, I will look at our strategic priorities to address them. Number one, violent crime reduction. We set a homicide record in Hennepin County in the year 2021. That is unacceptable, and it needs to be a top priority for both law enforcement as well as elected officials. As I said earlier, public safety is the issues that affect all other issues. As the sheriff of this county, I can see the trends across the city lines while working in partnership with our multiple cities, police departments and chiefs, to be more effective than we've ever been before. With all agencies doing more with less, I would argue that the collaboration we are doing now is historical, and that includes the city of Edina. Number two, the opioid overdose prevention. Chief Milburn first reached out to me and asked me if I would discuss this issue at your council. And I was so glad that he did, because public safety issue in fentanyl has no geographical, economic, or race boundaries. It affects everyone. Because of fentanyl, we have seen around a 500% increase in opioid overdoses over the last 10 years. 500%. One person a day died of opioid overdose in 2022, just in Hennepin County. Several people are saved by first responders or civilians administering Narcan for each person who dies. Several people per one that dies. This is nothing short of an epidemic. We have launched an initiative at the Sheriff's Office to attack this issue from all angles. This initiative focuses on education, enforcement, and advocacy. And it also embodies a video series that shows what is going on right here in our very communities. So when I talk about the enforcement, let me give you one example. In the first 6 months of 2023 alone, our task forces confiscated enough fentanyl to potentially kill every person in Hennepin County. That was just in the first 6 months. It is crucial to get the drugs off the street, and dealing with deadly drugs needs to face serious consequences so that our community members are spared. I could tell you with our CID unit, our Criminal Intelligence Division, when we find out who dealers are of fentanyl and the fentanyl that they have distributed have caused a death, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office will seek to have them charged with murder. Public advocacy. Our focus on fentanyl issue has drawn major attention, landing on the front page of the Star Tribune and on every major news station. We need to center the victims in this conversation, and our video series has detailed families has details about how families have been affected by this epidemic so far. You know, we have a family in one of those videos who 15 years old, she passed away. Her sister was an Edina high school student. It affects all of our communities. We equipped our deputies on the street and in the jail with Narcan, as well as release every person in our custody that we know that have that addiction with Narcan, with some kind of plan to maybe save them. We also are the first sheriff's office in the state that lead Narcan classes. We go out to the community, and we will also offer that in any community in Edina where we actually teach how to use Narcan and give community members Narcan on hand. It has been my experience working with different community members of people just walking, taking a bus, taking the train, and running into someone who is overdosed on fentanyl. Bottom line is Narcan does save lives, you know, and I know there's a difference of opinion about, okay, should we be working so hard to distribute it? We absolutely should be. We can't afford to give up on our community. Policy advocacy, as you will hear later, we lobbied lawmakers to increase the penalties for dealing fentanyl, and we succeeded. And then I like to talk about reform through programming, which is one I could talk about for hours, but I won't do that to you. But, you know, we started a program at the jail. It's called HOPE, Helping Others by Providing Education. Jail time should not be wasted time. And so what the HOPE program does is it not only centers around education, but it also has components in it where it's financial literacy, housing, different resources. The fact of the matter is between 80 and 85% at any given time of the people that are in the Hennepin County Jail, which is a pretrial facility, they go back to their communities. So we should be trying to equip them while they're in our care with whatever resources they need to hopefully be successful and not come back. And then there is the favorite topic, which is public safety recruitment and retention. As you all know, public safety must include policing. We need good people who want to do this work, and we need them now. In fact, we needed them yesterday. And then when we talk about the community education, engagement and education, I am a big believer in community policing. Positive interactions with law enforcement is so crucial. This is another reason why we must do all that we can to recruit and retain. We cannot just have enough people to respond to calls. That is a light that leaves law enforcement looking bad, because oftentimes when we're called, we're responding to emergencies, and it's usually not good. Although I did see a video recently where a little boy called 911 because all he wanted was a hug. That's typically, that doesn't happen enough, but that would be great. But we must have enough people in this field so that we can be proactive. Building relationships is not a goal. There is no end line to that. It's got to be something that is continuous if we are to have sustainable relationships. Again, I will go with leading with humanity. We also changed the state law to add the bureau that focuses solely on community relations. As short as I am staff, that was one thing that was non-negotiable. I needed a unit that's all they do is proactive work. And I would encourage any public safety entity to also have that, because it's not if things go bad, it's when. And so those relationships need to be built, those bridges need to be built before an incident occurs. Next, I'm going to go into legislative priorities. Oh, good, I am on point. Okay, good. We worked hard at the Capitol in 2023 to make sure that public safety was a part of the legislative agenda, and are already working on our plans for 2024. I believe you were all given folders that have some of this information in detail. An entire recap of the legislative session will be available on the Hennepin County Sheriff's website in the coming weeks, but I wanted to quickly highlight a few items for you all today. Public safety aid funding. Every time I speak, I talk about the crisis that we are facing with the respect of recruitment and retention. If you know, I've brought it up several times here, but that's just how important it is. I'm thankful that our state legislature recognized this issue and passed the public safety aid funding last session. You can see the details on my slides, on my slide, but cities, counties, and reservations are receiving one-time funds to address the public safety needs that we have. The Hennepin County Sheriff's Office presented a detailed list of our specific needs to our county board and received some of that money in our 2024 budget. Then there's the community outreach, which is crucial to be proactive in reaching out to our communities as we provide public safety. That is what Chief Milburn and I are doing today. And on this slide, I have a few examples. Our Community Outreach Bureau, which is something I discussed earlier. It's called COPA, Community Outreach Public Affairs. But then I also have a Community Advisory Board, and I have a Youth Advisory Board. And I'm happy to tell you that our Student Advisory Board, there's maybe 4 Edina students, and they are quite talkative in that. And then we also have on our Adult Advisory Board, Edina residents, as well as when we just hosted our first Citizens Academy since the pandemic, which was in person, and Edina residents participated in that as well. Excuse me. Next, I'm going to talk about the task force information. The Southwest Hennepin Drug Task Force and the West Metro Drug Task Force have merged to become one task force, allowing us to add additional detectives to this work and increase our partnership with the DEA. By merging these task forces, we were able to apply for state violent crime enforcement grant funding. We did receive approximately $384,000 for 2024 and 2025. All of this will allow us to work at higher levels or higher level cases with additional resources. We are expecting results because of this merger, and I will happily share those with you later in the year. You also have a handout showing the drug and gun seizures from each of our task forces, and the Southwest numbers from 2023 are displayed on the slide as well. Right, Jacob? That's right. Okay. So I want to say thank you very much for having me. That was a lot of information, and I am open to any questions that you may have of me and the Sheriff's Office.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Sheriff. I'm sure some of our council members may have a few questions for you. You've got that task force. For example, you've got several task forces you're involved in, and they're kind of geographic, I think. We're on one with the Southwest Hennepin group. I don't know if you'd want to comment on that at all, or the sheriff, on the kind of work you're doing together and the kind of successes you're having or the challenges you're facing.
Sure, I could speak to that. So we've always had a Edina detective assigned to the Southwest Drug Task Force for many, many years. And as part of the thinking and the strategy in the last year was that there was a better funding mechanism to support the work and then build it out in the Drug Task Force realm. And so that gets us into the state funding. We were very pleased with the results of that and applying for that funding source, and that came through above and beyond what we had expected initially, so that's great news for us. What we always like to do with narcotics cases is build those up to the federal level. So when we start hearing about DEA and federal authorities getting involved with that, those are big cases for us to get involved with. And when we talk about the fentanyl crisis and the things that are going on, we have to go after and target those sellers that are doing so much damage in the community. And so that's absolutely what the strength of this task force is going to do, is to build and continue to build that capacity up and have the right resources in place for that.
And if I could just add something else.
Sure,
with the
please.
13 detectives that we added. We are also starting to build out a task force to deal with auto thefts and carjackings. And we have several of our detectives that are going to Perf here in the next month for some additional training, and then 2 of the laterals that we just got over. So that is something else that I'm going to love for Edina to help join us, because that is also something that is harming our communities, the number of car thefts that we are seeing in our
Yeah, and if you're okay with that, I'll jump on that too. We've been talking a lot about auto thefts here and carjackings, and so behind the scenes we've had these conversations about how can we get boots on the ground and get an intel-led group together to deal with and tackle the ongoing auto theft crisis that we're seeing in the metro area. And working in partnership with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, that's absolutely a way that we can start to strategize and get the right people out on the street to do this important work. So we've been talking. We're going to go public with it, it sounds like sooner than later, and we're excited about that too, so it's good news for Edina.
Good. Other council members, questions? Yes, Member Risser.
We are currently working on our legislative priorities, so it's interesting to see your 2024 legislative priorities. And I don't know if there's one or two you really think are logical for municipalities to get on board with.
Well, last time I checked, Edina brings people to the jail too. I can tell you one of the things that hurts our budget so much. Actually, we had a lot of increases. It's the number of medical issues within our jail. Again, we do lead with humanity, so we make sure that people have the best care possible. We are not a sheriff's office that contract out for medical use. There's the waiver. It's called a waiver 1115. It's something that 7 states have already adopted, in which it will assist with some of that funding for medical. And it'll also help with the continuity of care. In case you didn't know, when people do come to jail, after day 7, they're shut off from their medical, whether it's public or private. And so the sheriff's office, the county does incur that. But then when we are trying to get people treatment and making sure that we are doing everything in the jail, which is our medical assistant treatment program and things like that, when they are released, they often have to go try to get insurance so that they can have that continuity of care. So it's really causing a lot of funding issues for our society as a whole. But that is one of the things that I could see help with, if you want to look that up, a waiver 1115. And then the other one is, the technology advancement, which was on the 2024. I do think a problem that we have here in Hennepin County with our various law enforcement agencies is that we work on different systems. We got to find some way where we can see things better in real time so that we can be better at being proactive, if you will. There's a lot of changes, like even with the court system and some of the things that are going on with like Odyssey and things like that are really going to affect the work that we do. Keeping our eye on what are the best technological ways for us to do our jobs better and for us to communicate better and decrease the amount of let's just say mistakes that can happen because of humans aren't perfect. That would be something that I could see needing some assistance with. I know one of the things that I had talked about at one of the various meetings that I was at is, I'm sorry, as I said, I did 16 years at Dakota County, so I just sounded like I was sentenced there, but where we did have a system that was called Season, and every agency in the county was on that same system, which helped us tremendously. But that is something that we're lacking here in Hennepin County, and I often hear, well, we're just so big and there's just so much. Well, that just means we have to work harder. It doesn't mean it's impossible. And it means more money, too, by the way.
Member Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the Edina Public Schools have a new goal of having every student do an internship before they graduate or get some kind of certification. So I don't know if you've been in contact with them or not, but if you have a role for high school students to come help your office, I think that might be an avenue for recruitment and just a chance for young people here in town to get to know the work that you do. So if you haven't made that connection, I'd encourage you to do that. And
we would love to, and yes, we do.
Okay, excellent.
We love our interns.
Excellent. Well, just thank you so much for coming. This is really important. This is an issue we hear about every day, and it's lovely to hear the work that you're doing. Thank you so much, and your leadership and your humanity. It's really awesome, and I appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Councilmember Jackson gave you a nice wrap up there, but I'm not ready to let you go just yet. I was just wanting to hear from you a little bit about what you're thinking some of the initial strategies could be, or what the ongoing strategies are around fentanyl use reduction. I mean, we're seeing a person a day die just in our county, and from fentanyl overdoses. And what are we going to do on the prevention side, catching the people that are selling it? And talking to, I had lunch with Brian Ricks from the airport, from the MAC a couple weeks ago, and he said they intercepted, I think you said 20-some thousand pills. They've intercepted like 500,000 fentanyl pills in 2023 at the airport, up from 25,000 a year before. So it's just like it's just steaming north, out of the, and now we're getting a full-on assault from the people that are engaged in selling this lethal drug So what do we do about it?
Well, one, we have to talk about it. I will be honest with you, that student advisory cab, because I think it's so important to listen to our kids. We're going to be doing an initiative called Focus on Us, because I will tell you, they feel like they're unheard. One of the things I could tell you that specifically those Edina students brought up is that when there is a death, or if somebody focus a fentanyl overdose in their school, they say as adults, don't talk about it. And so all they're left with are these rumors. They are hungry for that information, and I'm telling you, if we keep suppressing it, the only people that are going to benefit are the dealers. The methods that the dealers are using right now, again, going to the 15-year-old that died of overdose, she didn't know she was taking fentanyl. They're using social media to sell these drugs. And granted, you shouldn't be on social media looking for Adderall or anything like that, but that's exactly what these kids are doing. And lo and behold, they're laced with fentanyl. Talking to this 15-year-old's mother, where she talked about being on the phone with 911, and they asked her, do you have Narcan in the house? And she didn't know what it was. She didn't know what that meant, and even if she did, she wouldn't know how to use it. So we have to keep talking about it. And we have to, we have to stop raising our kids in a world that does not exist. The reality is it's out there. And again, the only people who are benefiting off of thinking that we are causing the safe haven for our young people are the dealers. The other thing I would bring up too is making sure our public schools are willing to talk about it. That is something that I heard throughout the students that are on the student advisory board, is that they don't talk about those things in school. And I asked, would your schools be willing for us to come out and do a forum? And we will talk about it. We have families that want to talk about it. They want to talk about what happened to their kids. And when I say kids, I mean the two families that we dealt with right now, 15 and 16-year-old. The other one was just neighboring in Bloomington, an athlete. He's gone. He'll never be back. So our kids are asking for this information. They're asking for the real information. And another thing that I noticed in an initiative that I did with the DEA is there were local groups from across Minnesota that were there. And something that they said that I found to be true as well is the private schools are allowing these forums. Why are the public schools not doing it? Again, we have to raise our kids in the world that's actually exists. We can't keep sugarcoating and hiding from it, because there are people that are preying on them. And, talking about administering Narcan, that's not a bad thing. When people are saying, oh, why are we treating people for this? Not every person knowingly is taking fentanyl. Not every person knows that just the smallest grains, the tip of a pin, can be enough to kill someone. We don't advertise it enough. And that's what we need to do, especially with all the trickery going on social media.
Yeah, good. Thanks for that. Anything else from council members? Wonder if we should take a photo of everybody together here up in front of the dais before you take off. We'd love to start our year that way.
Can we hoist you up on our shoulders, Mayor? Yeah? Okay, all right.
I wasn't prepared for that, so I'll have to run back to my office to get a camera.
Well, they've got a, I think. Yeah, I'll send it.
Let's go.
Let's get all the council members, the sheriff and our chief.
Chad, I don't know you, but you just smile a lot, so don't mess with me.
Is this the angle I should be taking it from? All right. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
You guys want to get him up too, and we'll have everybody else know?
Think we got it?
Okay.
Thanks.
Come on, smile.
Casey,
You get started. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on now to the reports and recommendations portion of the agenda. The first matter there is something we see every couple of weeks is the notion that we have donations to the city of Edina. We've got to accept those donations, and state law requires that. So with respect to resolution 2024-08, is there a motion to accept those donations embodied in resolution 2024-08 on behalf of the city of Edina?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Member Jackson, second by Member Risser to adopt resolution 2024-08, which accepts donations designated in that resolution on behalf of the city of Edina. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of resolution 2024-08 say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And donations in this reporting period, the Senior Center, really a nice grant from the Friends of the Edina Library, $2,000 for general use by the Senior Center. And also Park and Rec, the Edina Community Foundation, for the program that we run with kids in the summertime, actually all year round, $10,400 for the what they call the Connect Card scholarships to help make all these programs possible for kids that a little bit more challenged from a family standpoint, from an income standpoint. So this is really thank you to the Edina Community Foundation. Then the Crime Prevention Fund donated $20,000 to our police department for 7 license plate reader cameras that we're installing methodically around our community so that we can monitor who's coming into our town and picking up evidence quickly on stolen vehicles coming into our community so we can track them in a hurry. So we'll post those donations up on the website as well. And then we've got the next matter, which is our draft 2024 state legislative platform. Member Risser alluded to it in talking to the sheriff about other things we needed to potentially add to what we were doing, and it sounded like she gave a response on that. So let's see, who's going to take this matter? Don Urim, you're going to talk a little bit about it, and Jillian is going to talk to us about it as well.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm just going to give a brief introduction, and then Jillian, our city management fellow, will go a little more over the details of the state legislative platform. So just to recap what we've done to date, this item was first discussed at the last meeting in December. Following city council discussion, really directed staff to do 3 different things. One is to move this forward to this meeting tonight for discussion purposes. They also directed us to remove the 2 items related to the affordable housing issues that were discussed. So those items have been removed from the legislative platform, as well as to get some citizen input through our Better Together engagement platform. So those things have been accomplished. Staff is recommending no action tonight, and this will come back to the next meeting in January for further discussion and probable action by the city council. So with that, I'll turn it over to our city fellow, Jillian Straub, to go over some of the details.
All right, good. As you stated, Mr. Urim, this is informational purposes only this evening, and we're going to act on it at a subsequent meeting. So Jillian Straub, our city management fellow, is with us this evening, and we don't get a chance to see her enough. And so we get a chance to listen to a presentation by her about our draft state legislative platform for informational purposes this evening. So welcome, Ms. Straub.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, Mr. Urim. So I'm just going to go into a little bit of further detail about the process we use to draft our state legislative priorities, a few of the changes that were already mentioned to the draft platform, and then preview that action for you on the 16th, that council meeting. So this process is an annual one that staff goes through. In the fall, before the legislative session, staff identifies different state laws and state funding that would be advantageous to change or pursue so that the city can reach its goals. Because we're a statutory Plan B city, there are a lot of things that we can't do without state approval. So we go through this process of identifying those changes in that funding, and then we bring those proposed changes, that draft platform, to the city council for approval. City Council then discusses, reviews, and edits the platform like you all did at the December 19th work session. And at that point, items move to the state legislature. So we seek approval of that before the legislative session begins in February. That way we can meet with our lobbyists, our representatives, preview the platform for them before their session begins. By the time an item is approved by City Council, it then moves to the state legislature. And their items can take a long time to move from being just an item that the city seeks to one that's being incorporated into a bill that passes the legislature. So you'll see items on our platform year after year. We also don't have control over what they choose to take up any given year, so our platform is broad to kind of try and anticipate what they might want to cover in the following year. Having an adopted state platform allows staff to quickly react to requests to testify from the state legislature on positions that are important to the city. Without having this document approved by you all, we couldn't do that effectively or quickly as needed to achieve those goals of the city. Finally, if any of those items are approved at the state level, City Council and HRA are likely the final decision-making authority. A lot of the items staff seeks to add to the legislative agenda are permission to pursue something at the state level. The state may grant that permission to City. City Council decides any actions that City Council take will follow all the statutory requirements regarding public meetings, public hearings, and all of our own public engagement best practices. So at the 12/19 City Council meeting and work session, there were a few items that were removed from the agenda, and there was a Better Together site that was opened later that week on December 22nd. You all requested that we come back with the draft legislative agenda at this meeting, but we thought in order to give the public enough time to absorb the new agenda without those items, we'd leave the Better Together site open until January 11th. And we'll request that you take action to approve the draft legislative agenda without those two affordable housing items on January 16th. At that City Council meeting, you'll have the Better Together report in your packet at that time. And I can answer any questions.
Very good report. Questions for Ms. Straub at this point in time? Okay. Stand by. There may be some that come up here as we talk amongst ourselves. I think you've tried to provide us an overview of what things we think are important to our community, what things might be important more generally as a statutory city or a statutory creation of the state of Minnesota. And we'll see some of those same items, I think, on a broader basis when we have the MLC, Municipal Legislative Commission breakfast at the end of January. So our council members will see those in advance as well. Any comments, questions from council members at this point in time? Yes, Member Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to talk, before I ran for city council, I was a lobbyist. And was surprised with the affordable housing discussion that came up. The way legislation works is you have to find a legislator to write the bill and bring it forward. And it takes, 68 representatives and 34 senators to work it. And so the idea of just sort of throwing an idea out to see how the legislature would react isn't really how it works. So I guess would hope that all of us feel comfortable talking to our state delegation. If we have an idea, we want to see what's it going to do at the legislature, how's it going to be received, to have an informal conversation with them, because they're really friendly to us, and they've been working really hard. And it's, I always found as a lobbyist, it was an act of respect to start with the legislator before you started thinking about an idea to move forward, to just sort of get an idea of whether they would be a good partner in that or not. And I just wanted to say that I am thankful that our legislative delegation is so friendly, and that I like to view them as partners in this. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you for that. Anything at this point from anybody else? Member Risser.
I agree with what Member Jackson said, and I did have the good fortune of working with Representative Edelson last session on a bill that actually did pass. So it was the first time I got to go through that whole process and all the different committees and everything and just see how that works. And I do think it is so important for our credibility to, put together a legislative agenda that is solid and has been vetted and looks really good. Tonight I did ask about possible additions to that legislative agenda, and so I do just want to put that out there that I would like to, personally, I can take some time looking into the suggestions that we got tonight from the sheriff and pursuing those, but how do we take something, maybe this is a really good example, how do we take something like this and would it be appropriate to try to incorporate that into the agenda because we have time, working with Chief Milburn to see if those seem like things that, we can all kind of get behind. That's a little bit different than what you brought up, but it's bringing in a change close to the legislative session.
I think to the point you made about having time, I think we do have a little bit of time. So to the extent you have some thoughts about how we might potentially expand that legislative agenda, if you can get those written up and circulated to council members, we could talk about them on the 16th and decide whether we want to incorporate them then. But I think to the broader point that both of you have raised, which is important and accurate, I think, and that is that between now and the 16th of January, our proposed legislative priorities ought to be reviewed by our legislators to see if we're wasting our time on something in here. Like I've already heard that the bonding bill is going to be more restrictive than what people thought. And so they might think, well, don't try to bond for the aquatic center, or, we've got a couple of bonding requests in there, or maybe they'll be just fine. But I think getting some legislative input would be important too, because you also don't want to go over there with a sense from legislators that you're overreaching. And your legislators have the best sense of that, of how the teams are going to work over there from the respective parties and in the committees that they're on that are both Republican and Democrats. So I think you've raised some good points here. We should get this circulated to our legislative delegation and have them tell us whether they're comfortable with advancing some of these priorities that we think are important to advance, or whether they think we should hold off or add others that they think might be important, as Member Risser's thinking. So that cause any other comment? Okay, Member Risser?
I haven't seen anything on Better Together from a resident suggesting legislation, but if that does happen, I think it'd be good to just sort of be aware of that, and if one of us notices that, so we can kind of work with that.
Sure. Okay. All right. Good. Thank you, Ms. Straub, for making that presentation, Mr. Urim. All right. We're on now to commission correspondence. I don't think we've had anything new come in. All right. And Mr. Urim, you have any comments tonight in substitution for our ill city manager?
No, Your Honor, I do not.
Okay. Seems like anybody that got company over the holidays ends up with COVID. I don't know if that's what he's got, but I've just heard so many stories about that. No, they got COVID. This person's got COVID. That person's got COVID. Mayor and council comments. It's been a bit of a quiet 2-week period, but folks may have things they want to share. Start with Member Agnew. Anything you want to share over the last couple of weeks that's occurred?
No, nothing tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Member Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I actually have a number of things. I want to thank our commissioners who sent, we have 2 reports from our 2 commissions, one from the Parks and Rec, or actually 2 from the Parks and Rec and one from the Community Health Commission. And I'm really pleased at the work they've done. First, I want to make an announcement that we're accepting applications for new commissioners. The application period is through January 21st. And, I encourage all of us to go and talk to people, but also the public who are watching to please apply. It's a great interaction with the community for us on City Council. I read the report about Stop the Bleed. I think it's very interesting. It looks like it's a really interesting skill to have. with a limited expense for the city. And I hope that if we do go forward with that, that we reach out to the public schools to ask them to participate in the training. It's immediate first aid in case somebody is bleeding profusely. And I think that our teachers would like to have that training. So if we do that, please invite them. The Parks Commission, I just have to have a shout out. They've worked so hard on looking at all these different funding sources, and we'll be talking about that moving forward as we look at our CIP, our capital improvement program. But I wanted to thank them for that hard work. And then I wanted to just, over the holidays, I was thinking a lot about what 2024 is going to be, and thinking about the state of our democracy, and then that kind of feeds into my thoughts about affordable housing. And I just wanted to make kind of a really high-level statement that democracy needs a healthy middle class, and our affordable housing policy should be keeping in mind how do we keep a middle class in Edina. I think Member Pierce has identified that through teardowns, we're losing our naturally occurring middle-class housing and going towards a $1 million medium home in our city. And we're going to have these really expensive homes and apartments, and I think it's really important to think about keeping that middle as well for the resilience of our community and for our democracy, because two things that build democracy are home ownership and public education. There are other things, but those are really important elements. And so I think about family housing. And so I hope as we move forward with our discussion about affordable housing, we talk about ownership opportunities, and not just for single family homes or duplexes, but also low-density multifamily buildings with either cooperative ownership or rent-to-own options in a way that are buildings that are friendly for families, so with some green space and a place to play. So those are just my thoughts on affordable housing, and I hope that this year sees us talk a little bit more specifically about what we mean when we're talking about affordable housing and include those ownership opportunities. So thank you.
Thank you. Member Risser.
I also was very impressed with commission reports, and particularly with the alternative funding for parks. And one thing really caught my eye, the possibility of a philanthropic effort that is community driven. And there is information raising, how successful the Edina Crime Prevention Fund has been. And I can't help thinking, we're looking at our parks and the needs of our parks. And our parks are popular. People really appreciate our parks. Some kind of Friends of Edina Parks entity, I think, could be a real asset for the city of Edina. And I know, as an elected official, I would like to learn more about how the Edina Crime Prevention Fund was created. And so this is sort of my New Year's goal, with the goal of duplicating that effort for supporting Edina parks. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. This is my goal for 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of things for me, upcoming, I would say, in nature. The Metropolitan Council governance task force work continues. It's a legislative task force, so that reconvenes tomorrow when they're taking some more public testimony on Friday over at the University of Minnesota as the legislature thinks about whether or not there should be a modification in the form of governance in the metropolitan region here. So I'll keep you posted on that as that work goes along. And then just a note that a longtime resident of Edina and one of the significant developers, I think, in the metropolitan area, Kelly Doran, passed away just recently from cancer in his mid-60s, and really led quite a vertically integrated operation there at Doran Companies. With the development work that they did, the construction work that they did, you see the multifamily work that they've accomplished all over the metro area. So our condolences to Kelly's family, and there's a service on Friday at Mount Olivet, I think in the afternoon, if anybody's interested. And you can find the obituary online if anyone's interested in attending that service. I'll certainly try to get there on behalf of the city. So That's it for me. Don, did you have any comments?
I do not, Mayor.
Okay, all right. Well, here we go. It's another new year. We're off again. Member Risser moving into year 2. Yeah, here we go.
I remember Agnew.
That went fast. I remember Agnew. Yeah, I keep thinking about her. Well, of course, you had a planning commission stint too, but she kind of rolled right in, and it seems like she's been around a bit. But for both of you, yeah, here we go, year 2. And I think Member Pierce, he was absent tonight. They're doing a tribute to life for his dad that passed away. So that was the reason he couldn't be here, because of that tribute for his dad tonight. So is there a motion to adjourn the meeting of January 2nd, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Member Jackson, second by Member Agnew to adjourn the City Council meeting, the first City Council meeting of 2024. It is January 2nd, 2024. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adjourning the meeting of January 2nd, 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. City Council of Edina stands adjourned.